This content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Sex workers of Reddit, who is the grossest customer you've had? The guy that refused to accept that condoms were required. Kept offering more and more money. It ain't about money. My man, if you want it raw within minutes of meeting someone, how on earth am I supposed to trust that it's safe? Pro tip, it's never, ever safe. When I was a phone whore, I'd have pedophiles call me, and want me to pretend to be their 6-year-old daughter, niece or neighbor girl. Phone worker here. I had a guy, wanted me to put bodily excretions, roleplay on him. I was so stumped. So I said, if you've been a bad boy I'll piss on your face, if you've been a good boy I'll shit in your mouth. Cue the minute long groaning, grunting and screaming the guy did with what I could only assume was the filthiest, never-ending tsunami of spunk, followed with a thank you mistress. I logged off for the day, and did other things. I have no problem with kinks or fetishes, but he acted like he won the lottery. Not a sex worker, but I went to a strip club once when I was 28. One of my best friends growing had a sister 8 years younger than us. She walks on stage and we make eye contact. I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna go play video poker. Objectively she grew up to be pretty hot, but too weird. I'm not a sex worker, but I did run a bar opposite one of Edinburgh's infamous saunas, sort of legal brothel the police turned a blind eye to. Anyway, the girls used to come into my bar once their shift was over for a well-earned drink, and so I got to know some of them pretty well. Inevitably conversation would turn to their clients' kinks. Two spring to mind. The high court judge who came in to be spanked and be told he needed to be punished. Not that exciting, but the one I can never forget was the peanut butter man. He would come in the day before with a massive bag of peanuts for his favorite girl, and book an appointment the next day where the girl would crap on him, and he would smear it all over himself saying I'm the peanut butter man over and over. I could never get that image out of my mind. I wouldn't kink shame anyone. The worst thing is when a guy smells gross or tries to haggle with me. Take a shower before we get naked please. A friend of mine worked in the office for an escort agency. The grossest story she told me was about a guy who seemed to have a thing for cutting women up with his long fingernails. After the first complaint he was put on a list of don't accept bookings from this guy or number, but he kept using burners and different names, and every time the girl would complain that he basically only wanted finger them, but he had long sharp nails and had a habit of scraping, then get agitated when asked to stop, then he'd leave. I'm a part-time cam girl. One day a guy paid me $30 to watch him masturbate and barking while wearing his socks on his ears. Lasted less than a minute and it was very surprising. My wife's best friend is a very successful cam girl. She was pregnant and some dude was paying her thousands to watch her take her pregnancy supplements. She made an absolute fortune when she was pregnant. He would make baby sounds to her while she did it. He would check in on her and make sure that she was hydrated and well fed. He started gifting organic foods over Amazon. I personally saw her play Jenga with her clothes on and dudes were bidding for which piece to move. I couldn't believe my eyes. I still don't. Someone paid her thousands to have dinner one night. She hired security and he paid for the security to make sure he didn't touch her. It became a steady gig. Free food and thousands of dollars. She started doing the GFE thing for a while too. From being a stripper, this guy smelled gross, paid for 5 minutes in a private room. Everything goes well. The typical no touching private parts thing. He didn't want to pay for more time, so I was putting my clothes back on and he just hugged me really tight, then kneeled and tried to lick my pussy. A dude offered me $500 to adopt a dog and have sex with it. I very firmly declined. Was a stripper. The ones who tell you that you look like their daughter, daughter's friend etc., are pretty gross. Foot fetish dudes would come in at the end of the night and the sweatier your feet were the better. Most girls love them though because they give amazing foot rubs and pay you for it. Had a guy come in and lay on the floor and pay me to try to fart on his face. He was dressed like Carlton on Bourbon Street. Honestly a lot of girls like ones like this too. They pay really well and you don't have to really do any work. I had a guy that just wanted me to spit full globs of phlegm in his mouth while laid on his back with his mouth wide open. I'm rarely grossed out but I just can't deal with copious amounts of spit or phlegm. It took so much effort not to gag or throw up just from seeing it slide past his tonsils. On the other end of the spectrum I had a guy who liked to just lay on the sofa while I sat on him and watched TV. Human furniture fetish is definitely my favorite type of booking. The one who left skid marks on my sheets, because he couldn't wash his butt properly. The one who basically crapped himself and expected sex to continue. The one who asked if he could come over with 3 of his friends, after midnight on a weeknight, so was absolutely high on something, and only offered me $50 apiece to run a train. And he honestly thought it was a fair offer after looking at my hourly of $600 Australian dollars. The numerous men who didn't understand how to wash under their foreskins. The numerous men with insulting offers for bareback sex and absolutely no history of being checked for STIs because, I'm married so I'm clean. Like that wedding ring has some spell of repel chlamydia on it. It's mostly the hygiene factor honestly. If you have a weird fetish that most people would consider gross, but you're respectful about bringing it up, and you adhere to as many hygiene precautions as possible, and you're prepared to pay well for it, sex workers won't care. Not a prostitute, but I was sexed in with a customer who wanted to rub my vagina juices all over his gums, because all of his teeth had been removed the year prior, and had been replaced with metal plates in his gums. He said this all in the same breath. Sir. So, former cam girl here. I would have assumed this guy was trolling, but he just seemed so earnest and had already tipped me like $600 that night. So, I have a cat, and he wanted me to go get a piece of cat crap from her litter box, F it up my ass, and then poop it back out for him. He said he had $3,500 to spend to make it happen. Obviously, I didn't do it, and decided that was enough camming for me that evening and bid him goodnight. Still, I think about that guy a lot. That effing guy. I wonder if he ever got anybody to do it. Condom avoiders. Those who just plain reeked of BO, cheesy feet, dirty butt, too many cigarettes and who were complete strangers to a toothbrush. People who were scabby and scaly with suspicious sores in places you definitely don't want to see license. The guy who loved people to fart on him and in his mouth wasn't too flash either, but you got a laugh out of it at least. The guy who refused to pull out, even after he came. He became semi-flaccid and was still trying to stay inside as much as he could. Then when he finally was flaccid the D slipped out itself. I work at a sex store. We have a guy whose kink is cleaning. So he went to the arcades, glory holes and cinema and pulled all the used condoms out of the garbage can and ate the cum in them. We also have a dude that likes to lick doorknobs and another one who smells the used paper towels. Not my story, but I heard it from a friend. You know how girls will spit on your dick to lube it up before blowing you? There was this one customer who told his girl for the night that it was wasteful to spit on his D, and requested that she spit in his mouth instead. For every time she spit in his mouth, he would give her $10. I have 2 different guys that I'll never forget. The first was one that wanted my feet to be filthy dirty and stinky if possible, then I had to smash one foot in his face and get him off with the other foot. The other guy wouldn't let me turn on any lights at all, and when I got undressed I touched him and found his one ball was the size of a pillow. It freaked me out so bad, I told him I started my period and needed to leave pronto. There's many more but these 2 guys always stand out. Not really a sex worker but I stripped for a bit in college. The amount of older guys saying things to me like, tell me your real age, or, don't worry your little secret is safe with me, while grinning terribly was always gross. I look young so that wasn't very pleasant. It got worse when they would try and blackmail me into actual sexual contact by saying they'd reveal my actual age. Fortunately I was 19 so could just tell them to go ahead and do it. A client that I really liked once sharted on a white hotel bedspread. I almost cried. I had to wash the doona in that one spot and flip it, and sandwich a towel on the bottom, and a top sheet with a towel underneath. Not enough money in the world for that one. Well, I'm no sex worker, I was actually a computer repairman, and this is actually a true story. An older lady tried to pay me to have sex with her retarded daughter. Way back in the day when I was a stripper, I was giving a dance. The room was dark and I was giving a lap dance to a usual customer. The customers were allowed to touch as long as it wasn't any no-no zone. So I was sitting on his lap, no grinding, his hands to his side, and I randomly felt warm goo hit my back. I have no idea how I didn't notice anything sticking out or how he managed to get off with no physical touch, but I was mortified. I got up, demanded my pay, and quickly ran to the bathroom. Had to have the bouncer escort him out. Yes, not a sex work, but a sexy worker. I got to the man's house, and he wanted me to pour bleach on my titties. I literally just walked right out and never looked back. I'm no longer an active sex worker, but I was when I was 16, and if that shocks you, sorry I had to be the one to show you what a tiny bit of the real world looks like, and somebody brought me into their car, which was normal. It was a minivan, and he had all the back seats put down, nothing shocking yet. Then he told me to lay down on my back, and said he was gonna crap on me. I was like, nope, and I decided to bail, which is a very intense choice to make if you're working for somebody because they will cut the hell out of your pay for it, and he, who was twice as big as me, beat the hell out of me. But he knew he couldn't chase me when I got out, because after getting out of the back alley we would be in public. That was one of the worst days of my life, but I still managed to hide that any of that summer happened, so I guess I got off a bit easy. I went through a brief stint of sleeping with men from Craigslist for money when I was going through a very rough financial time when I was 20. It was a very dark time. There were some unshowered dudes, some who smelled bad, overweight, sure. But if they were nice, their looks didn't bother me. The grossest ones were the guys who forced anal without asking, refused to wear condoms, or haggled with money. I'm not sure I'd count myself as a sex worker, but a few months back I was in a dark place financially and resorted to a sugar daddy website. I talked to a lot of people and most of it led nowhere, as they wanted more than I could offer. I wasn't willing to have sex, only fool around. I'm only 18 so I wasn't comfortable with anything else. Eventually I ended up meeting an older man, late 50s, early 60s, in a wheelchair. He seemed safe enough after talking over a cup of coffee, so I got in his car. We'd agreed beforehand that there would be no sexual contact at all on the first meeting. I also reminded him of that several times during our coffee, and in the car. He still tried, and his persistent pushing for it convinced me a little bit would be fine. It wasn't. He ended up being quite violent, and the whole experience was very uncomfortable. A little bit turned into a lot, and I was too scared to say he was crossing a line. After a while I had worked up the courage to get out of the car, after making up an excuse for having to leave early. Walking back through the city looking for a bus stop, I felt very ashamed about crying in public. I never talked about the encounter ever again. This is the first I've spoken of it. I don't think he's to blame in this situation, it's 100% on me. I put myself in that situation, I underestimated him due to the wheelchair, and overestimated my own ability to say no. If I was a more confrontational and confident person I'm sure it could have ended a lot sooner. Still, the money helped me not be homeless. My heart goes out to all the people who do this type of work, you're all incredibly strong people. I have so much admiration for your strength. Be safe. Thanks for listening to another very dark episode of Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the bell icon for more videos like this.